Welcome back, Idiot Squared viewers. This week we have a banger episode. Today we are discussing anti-aging, cellular rejuvenation, cellular intelligence, the fountain of youth, possibly living forever, immortality, regrowing limbs, building muscles bigger and stronger, all the crazy stuff. This is our future. Polska, I sent you a talk by Dr. Michael Levin regarding this. Did you watch it? If so, what did you think?
Bro, I watched the whole thing and I was just completely blown away. It's just such groundbreaking, dope ass shit. It's the kind of shit where when you're a kid, you just dream about. You know what I mean? You're like,
Absolutely.
yo, imagine we could like regrow limbs and regenerate certain organs. Like it's just like some fantasy type of stuff that you would talk about as kids. You know what I mean? That superheroes can do. And I feel like Michael Levin is like on the brink of this new sort of, I don't know how new it is. Like, I don't know too much about it. Like I had a difficult time understanding everything he was saying, but I did pick up on some of the stuff. But I was just blown away by the presentation in general. He showed some worms getting cut up and then regenerating heads and shit. It was wild.
Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation. How close is he, or how long has this been around? Well, some organisms have found the ability to do this and have been doing it for a very long time, like those planaria, those worms that you mentioned that he cut up, so they can regenerate. But historically, we haven't been able to regenerate. And so what he sort of uncovered or discovered is this cellular intelligence, this bioelectric field that's sort of helps cells to know what they should do and sort of know what they should be, in a sense. And he's essentially found ways to not hack it, but to utilize it to get things to regenerate that otherwise wouldn't or shouldn't regenerate. They have a whole bunch of really interesting presentations about all this stuff, but essentially what they're leveraging is this bioelectric field, and they use ion channel modulators to augment and adjust these bioelectric fields at a cellular level or at a bioelectric level that sort of influences the growth of cells. And so it is what I would call future medicine, right? Like this is the future of medicine, and it's pretty damn amazing. Like this is the sort of stuff that will lead to, like what you said, regeneration, being able to grow a limb, but not just like regrow a limb that you already had. This opens the door to regrow things that you didn't have or in different ways. So like you could grow like a really big arm, or you could grow an arm that has a different kind of structure, or more fingers or less fingers, or
a huge cock. Just grow this massive cock over like, yeah.
Right. You are not the first person that I've mentioned these things to, and that was their only response.
Yo, fuck yeah. That's what I'd be getting. Like, yo, so Doc, can we add like a couple inches of girth and length to this puppy? You know what I mean? But it would get crazy. Like people would just want bigger and bigger and bigger dicks. And then suddenly the dicks would be so fucking big that you would have to get like pants, like custom made pants to put over your cock. You know, people would take it that far, guy. You know what I mean? Like they would just stop at a couple of inches.
Look at bodybuilding. Look at the different mechanisms people have of augmenting their bodies. Yes, there will always be a certain percentage of people that want to take things to an extreme. That's going to be interesting to see. A couple of my buddies that I was talking to about this, guys I go motorbike riding with, they are saying the same thing, and literally the first thing they said was, "Does that mean you could get a bigger cock?"
That just means we all have small dicks.
Or yeah, I don't know what it says, but yeah, very funny indeed. Okay, so in the serious side of things, I've got the papers up, which I can screen share in a second. We'll have the papers linked in the show notes, or the main paper that we'll be discussing today in the show notes. But if you guys haven't, or if any of the listeners have not heard of or seen some of Michael Levin's work, we'll link to an episode that Polska and I are referring to. It's probably his most digestible and comprehensive presentation on this subject, and it's very exciting. I just want to make a note too that Michael Levin also has, that's publicly available, a database of these ion channel modulators. and their interactions. And so you can play around with this stuff as well. So yeah, it's very interesting. He's doing some groundbreaking stuff. They've been able to regrow legs on frogs and a whole bunch of other things. Just bonkers stuff. So this is future medicine, essentially. So I'm just going to quickly, I'm just going to pull up this article and I'm just going to read. I won't screen share it just yet, but I'm just going to read the title. So the title of the paper is Future Medicine, From Molecular Pathways to Collective Intelligence of the Body. So the remarkable anatomical homeostasis exhibited by complex living organisms suggests that they are inherently reprogrammable information processing systems that offer numerous interfaces to their physiological and anatomical problem-solving capabilities. We briefly reviewed data suggesting that the multi-scale competency of living forms affords a new path for biomedicine that exploits the innate collective intelligence of tissues and organs. The concept of tissue-level allostatic goal-directedness is already bearing fruit in clinical practice. We sketch a roadmap towards somatic psychiatry by using advances in bioelectricity and behavioral neuroscience to design methods that induce self-repair of structure and function, relaxing the assumption that cellular control mechanisms are static. Exploiting powerful concepts from cybernetics, behavioral science, and developmental biology may spark definitive solutions to current biomedical challenges. That is just like a profound introduction to a paper.
I'm just blown away by this whole thing. And the anti-aging application as well is dope, where you can basically live forever and not age with this technology as well, right? It's not only for limb regeneration and organ regeneration, but it's basically also to
cellular.
Yeah, exactly. Where you could not be invincible, but actually maybe.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Wild, man. It'd be like that. Have you seen that movie where time begins to count down when you turn 25?
Yes.
And it's like an alternate reality movie, right? It's an alternate reality
Is that
world.
with Justin Timberlake?
Yeah.
But the only way you could get more time is by having more money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, time was kind of used as a currency, I believe. But yeah, I guess it'd be not like that, but you could just stop aging at the age of 25 with this technology if you so choose to, all right?
Yeah.
What about reverse aging?
Yes. So apparently, and so I've heard this made a few times, and it's been noted in the papers that there is a memory inherent in the cells, so to speak. So we used to think it was all in the DNA, but apparently it's not. And so apparently you can turn the cell's age or the cellular age back to whatever time you sort of want using these bioelectrics.
I don't feel like it's getting enough recognition, this field. I feel like this should be something a lot bigger, because you listen to the talk with Michael Levin and it doesn't have that many views. Like I realize he just posted it, but you would think it'd be something that would get a lot more attention. You know what I mean?
You would think, but lots of people are busy doing what they already do. Not many people have a huge amount of time to be off exploring, like most people are in that exploit, like they're stuck with the day-to-day, so to speak. And I think that if you first heard this, you'd probably just go bullshit. You know what I mean? Like this is something that's been claimed many times, so to speak. But now we're getting into the time or the progress or technological advancement in our society where this is actually becoming, real, so to speak. And his work has shown that it is. It's crazy what he's shown with these preliminary studies and the work that they've been doing. But I think it's easier for most people to just be like, yeah, bullshit, because it would take a lot of time and effort and, changing your belief structures to think about this in this way. So yeah, I think that's possibly why it's not. It's also very early. Like we're on the cusp of this. Like this is very, very new. This is cutting edge stuff. So I think that's also why it might not be as popular or as well known.
Do you think his approach has been different from others in the past? Because it seems like his whole hypothesis or his whole approach saying that it's a communication issue. It's a cell to cell communication issue. And like every part of your body sort of has like a memory, and you just have to understand how to stimulate different parts of it in order for it to, have this cascade effect. That I think that's a unique approach that he's taken, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas before, people were looking at genes, like genes only, and trying to sort of manipulate genes. And I guess like that's not exactly what his approach is.
So his approach is novel. It absolutely is. When you compare it to what's previously been done in the mainstream, so to speak. He points to people much earlier than him, like way back in the early 90s or early 1800s, who were doing certain things like this. And so he doesn't think he's early in comparison to them, but in comparison to the mainstream, he's definitely early, and this is completely novel. The big thing for him is he integrates many different things. So he's integrating physics, information theory, consciousness, all of these different things together. And he's really creating a very high resolution image of the problem at hand, or the problem that we're trying to solve. So just to recap, in case some of that was missed, Levin introduces this idea of cellular intelligence, or the cells having an intelligence, and that all intelligence, by his definition, are collective intelligences. And there's intelligence all the way up the stack. And so what we experience as our consciousness is the sum total of all of these other intelligences across different scales, or different things at different scales solving different problems. And then at our scale that we exist, we experience our consciousness as this one thing, when really it's made up of all of these individual consciousnesses or intelligences.
He sort of proved that really nicely when he took is it the pylori, or what's it called? The worm thing?
Planaria,
yeah. Where he would cut it in half, and the tail would grow the head, and the head part would grow the tail. And if he manipulated one part of the planaria, then he could he could get it to grow double-headed or double-tailed. And if he grew it double-tailed, he could cut that one in half and then get it to both tails to grow a head as well. So in that, he's saying that there is some sort of communication and memory going on within the cells of the planaria, right? So to me,
but he manipulated the bioelectrics, and he could get it to grow a second tail or double heads.
Right,
so by manipulating that bioelectric field, you can then change the morphology or the structure of the planaria.
What was the chemical that he exposed the planaria to that made their head explode?
I think it's barium.
So he had a generation of planaria, and he would expose them to that chemical, and their heads would explode, right? And then he was able to manipulate something, get them to sort of evolve into being able to be in that environment with that chemical, and their heads wouldn't explode. He was able to get them to adapt, like a generation, the next generation of planaria was able to adapt to that chemical, and then they would continue being adaptive to that chemical. And it's a chemical that they've never been exposed to prior in their existence.
Yeah, so I can't remember if he did something or if they actually just adapted over time. If it was an evolutionary adaptation. I can't remember if it was one or the other.
Yeah.
But either way, it's fascinating, right? Like, is that not just crazy? But again, it's going down to this level of bioelectrics, which is something that was very novel to me. Like, I hadn't heard of these things before listening to him. I'd never heard of these terms. I'd never heard anyone speak in this way until listening to him talk about it. And so again, drilling home this bioelectrics and this, this bioelectric field that sort of dictates the way things form and what they turn into in the body. And so this has huge implications, especially for people that are born with deformities, or, preventing certain deformities happening, etc. And then also understanding why those deformities may have happened. Like, there's obviously a disruption or a change in that bioelectric field from what it would otherwise have been, that causes this. And it just opens up an entire possibility space. And it's amazing. So I've done some stuff with, I've like gone through the paper with Claude, which is an artificial intelligence, and it's done a really good job of dissecting the main parts of the paper and sort of summarizing and drilling into certain areas.
Did you say with Claude? It's an AI?
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't heard of it. What is it?
Claude is a language model made by Anthropic, which is an AI company made by a bunch of people that used to be at OpenAI, but did not agree with the way OpenAI was progressing, seeing as they're not really open. And so they've made their own. And Claude performs better on some tasks than like your GPT-4 will. But the main advantage with Claude is that it has a 100K context window. So the biggest context window on GPT-4 is 32,000 tokens, but Claude has 100,000 tokens. So that's like, a small book. You can fit all the papers in, you can do all that sort of stuff in its context window. So it can sort of see the totality of it, and then you can ask questions based on the totality. Wow. So context windows matter with AI.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. And is Claude free to use?
At the moment, yes, you can sign up and get free, but you will have to be in the US or the UK, or if you have a VPN, you can be wherever you want to be, or wherever you need to be.
Right.
All right, sharing my screen. I prompted, think step by step. In this PDF, there are many profound insights. Go, that should be through, and provide a high-level overview of them, also highlighting some of the implications and applications. So in this paper we're talking about, it says, here is a high-level overview of some of the key insights and implications from the paper. Living organisms exhibit remarkable anatomical homeostasis and can regenerate complex structures. This suggests they have inherent computational abilities to solve problems of anatomical control. So this whole computational way of thinking is it's having a Cambrian explosion right now. Like, this is to understand that we can model things quite effectively, well, very effectively, computationally, and learning how to think computationally and looking at these problems computationally is proving to be very useful and productive. It also ties into a lot of the Wolfram physics stuff and a whole bunch of other things where essentially they're also saying the universe is computational and all the rest of it. We can get into all that later. Okay. Cells and tissues have collective intelligence and native problem-solving capacities that can be harnessed for regenerative medicine. They can improvise solutions to novel problems beyond just reaching a preset target morphology. So essentially, what that's saying is, before you would think that we'd have to figure out how do you make an arm, or how do you, what are all the intricate steps that need to be done to regrow an arm kind of thing. And then we'd try and solve all of that. But that's just like a ridiculous amount of computation, a ridiculous amount of problems to try and solve. Whereas he's saying the cells have this intelligence in them. All we need to do is get the bioelectric field right, and then they'll do all of that for us. So we don't have to worry about how to precisely do each step along the way to regrow an arm, right? We can just get the bioelectric field right, and then the cells will do that. So it switches the computational burden not onto us, which is historically where it's been, but onto the cells. And the cells have the capacity and the ability to do it, which just is mind-blowing when you sit and think about it. Okay, next point. Development, regeneration, and cancer suppression can be seen as facets of the same process. Pattern homeostasis, driven by bioelectric networks that encode target morphologies. So, couple of things in there. Does that make sense, or are there some things that you'd want to clarify? I feel like they might not be familiar words.
Yeah. Are you able to explain that further? Elaborate on that a little bit?
So pattern homeostasis, right, is identifying that there's patterns and keeping them stable. Okay. Driven by bioelectric networks that encode target morphology. So target morphologies is the target shape or the target design. Yeah.
So that's when he was able to have the polaria or whatever it's called, have planaria, have like triangle shaped heads, flat heads, fatter heads, right? He was able to manipulate the shape as well.
Yeah, okay. That's the morphologies.
Okay.
Yeah, and so there's a cool concept that he talks about is morphospace, or the space of possible shapes, and it's huge. And so he talks about how like in the future
you could have a square dick, a big massive square cock if you wanted.
Well, or you could have like there's some square pussies,
like a hammerhead. Yeah. Imagine like a big hammerhead looking cock.
I try not to imagine that, but if you want to go there, go for it.
You wouldn't even be able to do anything with it. It would just be for show. Like people would just look at it, admire it, and then cool. Can you fuck with it? No, not yet, not yet. Oh well, okay. It's not. It is what it is. Good luck with it.
I feel like for some people, just the ability to have it looked at is probably going to satisfy most things.
Yeah.
Just the attention. But yes, there's just a huge space of different morphologies. Like morphospace is quite huge. And so, like you mentioned earlier, people are going to take this stuff to extremes and explore that space, and it's going to be bonkers. But he says in his talks that like, you came from this tree, or you're from the, fish, or evolved from birds, avian or whatever. Whereas like now there's going to be these completely new things that pop up that didn't evolve from any of those things, that are completely novel in sort of our evolutionary tree. And so there's just, morphospace is massive, and we will be able to explore it. Okay, so next point. The liver exhibits a hepatostat mechanism to tightly regulate its mass and regenerative capabilities. Hepatocyte transplantation, there we go, finally got it, 3 attempts. Hepatocyte transplantation studies reveal capacities to rebuild functional ectopic livers driven by need of function. So essentially what that says is livers possess the ability to be regenerative, okay? But they're also adaptive. So, when you see people, a common term in Australia is a beer belly. You see someone with a beer belly. Is that a common term?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of the time that beer belly isn't necessarily fat, right? A lot of that protrusion, especially up near the rib cage, that really high protrusion, is actually the person's liver. Okay. Now, because the liver can adapt and it has regenerative capabilities, it will, like a muscle, if you start to challenge your muscles more, right, those muscles will adapt. That's one way to grow muscles, right, is to challenge them, and they will adapt by getting bigger and stronger or whatever they need to do. The same happens with the liver. So when people drink lots of alcohol, your body has to process all of that alcohol, and your liver is, the main organ that does the processing. And so because it's having to process so much alcohol, it's like, well, we need to have more liver to do this. And so the liver grows.
I didn't know that.
And so this is where, it's bonkers. But like back at university, when we had to do like anatomy, and we did a lot of cadaver stuff. We had an example where we had a regular person's liver of a certain, they were, say they're 80 kilos or like, 170 pounds. A regular person's liver. Then we had the same weight person's liver, but they were an alcoholic. Right? So one liver came out in like a regular tub. The other one came out in like one of those big recycling bins, or, like those Home Depot bins, like 150 liter Home Depot bin. And it was legitimately double the size of the other liver.
Wow. That's wild.
So he's saying, it's obvious cells have this ability. Some present this, naturally they present this ability, but others don't. And so he's like, why? But now we figured out that they all have this ability. It's about getting them to utilize this ability. Okay, so next point. Tools from neuroscience and behavioral science can provide a template for understanding and manipulating the collective intelligence of tissues and organs. The developmental bioelectricity framework offers a tractable interface for this. So tools from neuroscience and behavioral science can provide a template, which is good. So for understanding and manipulating the collective intelligence of tissues and organs. And then this bioelectric or bioelectricity framework offers a tractable interface. So what he's saying there is like, he gives a good example in his talk, but it's like, it's essentially saying that there's like a software layer as opposed to a hardware layer. So the example that he normally gives, which I think is a really good one, is every time you want to use a different app on your computer, you don't have to go into your computer chip and resolder all of the connections so that you can run a new app, right? You just download the new software. Right? And so he's saying there's an analogy that can be made with the human body and bioelectricity, which is instead of going in and trying to adjust the DNA and adjust all this, exactly where every cell is, you can just go in at the software layer, which is this bioelectricity layer or this bioelectric layer, and you can reprogram there. So it's like reprogramming with computer code instead of soldering all the different wires in different positions. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it's like a meta way of doing it, right?
Yeah, and way more high level, way easier.
Right.
Right. So yeah, so it's a new interface into regeneration, into healing, into dealing with cancers, all of this crazy stuff. And it's through this bioelectric layer. Okay. Transient trigger stimuli applied to bioelectric networks can induce complex downstream effects like limb regeneration without needing to micromanage all the details. That was that point I was making earlier. So it's like, we want you to grow a new arm, and then all of a sudden the body just figures out how to do it. A good analogy here is also with like AI. Like you've been using AI to code a bit. I use it every day to help me code and do different things. And so like previously you'd have to learn a programming language. You'd have to understand it to a certain degree to then be able to utilize it. Now you can just go in at a high level and just be like, AI, code this. And it does it. And so this is kind of what's happening with this breakthrough, but for the human body, regeneration and health, anti-aging and all the good stuff.
It would be so funny having like a limb grow back. Like imagine you have like a war veteran who lost his arm in the battle or whatever. And like they stimulate the arm where it got cut off. Like let's say it got cut off at the shoulder, and they stimulate it here. And then just like this little like arm starts growing out, and it's going to take a while, right? It's not going to grow overnight.
No,
it'll probably grow, I don't know. Let's just say like it grows like a centimeter a week or something. You know what I mean? So it's going to take quite a long time for it to get to the full length, but there would be like a point where it's like coming out like small and all like fucked up looking. And you got to be like really careful. You don't like bump it into things because it's delicate. It could break easily. So you'd probably have to like, be really conscious of what you're doing, but it would just be so funny. Like this little thing just coming out slowly, like growing, like you would be, like I would be laughing at my buddy, like, like your arm looks so fucking stupid. And I'd feel comfortable making that joke because I know that he's going to have a full arm soon. He's going to punch me in the face with, but it would just be hilarious.
Yes, yeah. That is the key point, that his baby arm will someday become a full arm and he can fuck you up with that.
Yeah. But until that guy, we can arm wrestle and I'll fuck him up. Fuck that little arm up guy. Or so have you tried jerking off with that arm yet? No, since I got my dick like 3 times, since I put 3 inches on my dick, I can't jerk off with my little arm anymore, right? My hand's not big.
It can't grasp it.
Yeah.
Imagine they told his arm to grow back, but it ends up with the little hand, and he's like, "Man, since my dick upgrade, now I should have spoke to you guys about getting my hand size upgraded." All right,
that'd be so crazy.
We digress. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Hey.
No, I was gonna say like sooner or later it's like one is gonna make, like he's gonna get the big dick, then the big hand for the big dick, then he's gonna want to get the dick bigger, then he's like, oh shit, I gotta get a bigger hand again, and there's gonna be no end to it. As soon as he's gonna have a fucking massive ass hand and a massive ass dick that he can't even do anything with. He's gonna be like struggling, dragging it around with him everywhere he goes, not even being able to jerk off. And he's gonna be like, yo, He's gonna get to the point where he hits rock bottom. He's like, yo, we gotta downsize this. It's gonna be like the worst day of his life. Asking Michael Levin to downsize his cock, it's gonna destroy this guy.
Well, hopefully you won't have to ask anyone except for his AI that can do it for him. We should actually put we should remind ourselves in 20 years' time to come back and listen and see if any of these things have come true. I pray that they haven't, but at the same time, if they have, it'll be funny. Okay, so very powerful stuff, right? Next one, we'll go through this step by step. Okay, the future of regenerative medicine may resemble somatic psychiatry, using communication and experience-based interventions to shape tissue behavior instead of just molecular tweaks. That's very interesting to me. That seems like, pseudoscience or crackpot stuff. But after reading all of the papers and listening to his presentations and seeing the work that he's been doing, I actually think that it's also, it is a possibility.
We're off to a good start, guy. Like so far, I'm blown away, man. I think I just wonder how long it's going to take for us to get there. You know what I mean? Because for sure we're going to get there eventually, but in our lifetime, I hope so. I hope so. I hope it's in our lifetime.
I'm very confident that it'll be sooner rather than later, like in our lifetime, so to speak. The reason I'm very confident is because he's an early adopter of many different things, and I know that he's using AI currently in a bunch of stuff. And the beautiful thing about AI or machine learning, especially like the transformers and all this stuff, is like they're universal function approximators. And so what they're really good at is, being able to take data and extract patterns and, essentially find out how to, approximate the function that you need. And so that to me is all that this is. And so by, being able to apply artificial intelligence, machine learning to this, plus, fantastic scientific practices and chemistry and biology practices that Levin already has, and a great team that he already has, I just think, this is happening, and it's hopefully going to happen sooner rather than later. Now, I think the only thing that's going to be a bit of an issue is like approval for these works, if that makes sense. So they've done it in like a series of different organisms, and they're moving up the stack. I think they're now moving into mice or rat models, or they've already started doing that, and then now they're moving up further than that. But how long till it gets into humans, I think could be more of like a gatekeeping or regulation thing. Do you know what I mean? So that'll be interesting. Anyway, so we'll go through and I've got a couple more. So there is great potential to harness the innate problem-solving and learning capacities of tissues to induce self-repair and cancer suppression. Overcoming issues like genetic defects, this can lead to a new paradigm for radical regenerative medicine. So then some implications. So some key implications are that we need to view the body as an integrated system with collective intelligence, focus more on system-level repair goals instead of molecular details, develop ways to communicate with and manipulate physiological networks, and leverage innate cellular competencies for regeneration. There is huge promise in moving from a purely biochemical view towards concepts from cognitive science and cybernetics. So he's integrating so many different things into this approach. Okay, so I said, think step by step. Let's explore the future medicine side of things in more detail. Also, for anyone that is playing around with AI or is interested in using like these new chat bots, this prompt, think step by step, greatly improves the quality of the output from the large language model. So just getting it to think step by step, and you write it at the beginning, so it's like one of the first things that it sees, and then whatever you want after that, I've found to greatly improve the output. There's also many papers on why this is important and how, like, theories as to why it might work. Okay. So the paper discusses some fascinating ideas around the future of medicine by harnessing collective cellular intelligence and physiologic control systems. Here's a closer look at some of those implications. The ultimate vision is an anatomical compiler, a system to convert a desired anatomical structure into the specific signals needed to direct cells to build that morphology. This would enable radical tissue regeneration and reprogramming. Okay, so we were just talking about computers, AI, and the rest of it. So this anatomical compiler is essentially a way of taking like, our high level goal or description or thing that we want, and then getting the cells to be able to do it. And that's why I think like, AI, machine learning, those things are going to be very helpful in bridging that gap, coming up with the translation languages necessary to take from our high level request or goal or thing we want and taking it down into the cells and then eventually getting those cells to do what we want. So is there anything, like I can keep reading like this, but is there anything else you want to sort of chat about with this? You got questions that you'd like to understand a bit more? What comes to your mind?
At this point, just how many people this could really help. Like we joke around about making your dick bigger, but really this is for people who seriously need to, have health implications. For example, I think Michael Levin said people who are born with deformities, right? We could rehabilitate those groups. People who have genetic predisposition to cancers, we could help those groups. People who lost limbs, help those groups as well. So it's just like, I mean, it's like I said at the beginning, this is like shit that you dream about when you're a kid, man. It's just like fantasy shit. Like it's so wild. And man, like personally, because this is a little bit personal for me because I have someone in my family that could benefit from this technology greatly. And I'm just kind of like thinking like, man, if this comes out within the next like 20 years, maybe my family member would have the chance to have access to this, and how incredible that would be. Like I'm just putting myself in their shoes, and
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, it is absolutely. The work he is doing is amazing. And so you asked how many people could this help? Well, essentially everyone, like literally everyone. Insofar as like just like improving quality of life, like think about like arthritis, chronic pain, inflammation, inflammatory diseases, metabolic issues, all of these different things essentially can be addressed through this modality or through this mechanism. Being able to communicate with those cells. The interesting thing I just thought of, which is like, okay, so yeah, we can communicate with those cells and get them to do stuff, but can we listen to the cells, right? Can we find a way to be able to sort of understand them? And like, you get a morbidly obese patient and you get them in and you start listening to their cells and they're like, fucking help us. Tell them to stop. We just keeps eating. Stop it. We're full. Can you not see? We're full. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we can talk, 100%. We can communicate to them, but can they, anyway, so it just opens up so many crazy things. But yeah, it's essentially everyone benefits from this. That's why it's amazing. Just because like, you can improve the quality of life, if not extend lifespan to some degree. And there's a whole other argument about that. But it's huge. It's really interesting. One thing I would say is like, if this is interesting to you, then you should take some time to just try and understand this work from Michael Levin. But then also if you have like interest in it, like reach out to him and, maybe do a postdoc or maybe do like a research project with it. Like I'm sure there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done in this area. And so the more hands on deck, the more brains doing computations in regards to this, then the sooner it can happen, right?
Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
So like imagine you have an injury, right? Like it's going to change sports essentially. Like, sports will become insane to watch, right? Because one, you can have people improving their performance through all sorts of different modalities, right? But people aren't really going to like be as cautious.
Yeah.
Like you could just go crazed, have like some massive accident, lose your arms and lose a leg, lose an arm, whatever. And then like, couple months or a year and a bit later, you've regrown that shit. So can you imagine how intense sports would be if people just like the whole like self-preservation wasn't a thing anymore?
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
People be willing to take a lot more risk. That's true. That's mad funny. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Like people already do take ridiculous risks and we can die and we can't regenerate. Like imagine, once they've realized that you can regenerate and, like what?
That's a good point. That's a good point. It'll definitely have an impact on changing the culture a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on. Next scene, we'll keep going through this. A key concept in morphostasis, the ability of cell collectives to detect deviations from a target morphology and rebuild appropriately. Understanding the mechanisms behind this could enable control over anatomical form. That's that, like, being able to grow whatever you want kind of thing that I was mentioning earlier. Developmental bioelectricity research reveals bioelectric networks help encode target anatomies. Manipulating these networks by targeting specific ion channels could induce regeneration and normalization of birth defects or cancer. Are you still there, guy? Okay, so we went through the developmental bioelectricity. Now we're going on to transient trigger stimuli applied to bioelectric networks can kick off complex downstream effects like appendage regrowth. This suggests we may not need to micromanage all the molecular details, like we discussed before. There is huge potential for electroceuticals, ion channel drugs that alter tissue bioelectric states to trigger healing. Computational models can help identify targets. So that was that database that I mentioned that he has of a bunch of these ion channel drugs and their different interactions. And then this is, again, these machine learning and AI is going to help with these computational models, right? So we can essentially leverage the power of machine learning, which is, like multi parallel processing abilities of AI to take advantage, to find the pathways that are going to work for what we want, essentially. So again, he talks about the cognitive concepts from cognitive science, like memory, learning, and active inference may apply to somatic tissues. This could enable somatic psychiatry using communication and experiences to shape tissue behavior. Here we go. Machine learning could help bridge the gap between human-level anatomical goals and lower-level cell controls. AI could help derive optimal stimuli to direct tissue repair. A major opportunity is tapping into the innate problem-solving and adaptation capacities of tissues. This could enable self-repair and normalization of complex diseases like cancer. So then, goes a little summary there. So like the last little bit, this paper lays out an exciting roadmap for how ideas from cybernetics, neuroscience, and developmental biology can transform regenerative medicine by interacting with somatic intelligence. Okay, so electroceuticals are therapeutic agents or interventions like ion channel targeting drugs or devices that may work by altering the electrical state of cells and tissues to trigger endogenous healing and corrective functions. So these are things like potassium, calcium, and different drugs that have effects on the flow of sodium, potassium, calcium ions, etc., into cells and out of cells. And so that's where he talks about and shows these bioelectric fields and how they can manipulate the bioelectric field and then get the organism or the thing that they're experimenting with to grow a different limb, or to grow two of one thing, or to grow it in a different place, or to grow it with a different shape. I don't know if you had some time to look at any of the visuals in the paper, but I'll get up a couple.
Negative, guy. The only thing I did was watch that hour, 7-minute episode with Michael Levin. Did we mention that we would link it in the pod, in the description?
Yes, we will link that. He had a couple of pictures in that presentation actually that were quite good.
Yeah. He did supply like a bunch of it was like a slideshow that he presented essentially.
So they've got a really cool way of like looking at. They use these dyes and a really cool setup to be able to see that bioelectric field and then be able to make adjustments to it using those ion channel drugs. It's just fascinating. Is there anything you want to chat about while I quickly do that?
I'm just trying to understand the cancer portion of it, because the issue with cancer is that cancer cells will attack healthy cells and reprogram healthy cells from the inside, and then they'll become cancerous cells, and then they'll go and attack other cells. And the immune system has a problem discerning between cancer cells and normal cells. Is that the issue with cancer? Why your immune system has a difficult time sort of suppressing it?
No. What Michael Levin has a really good talk, another good talk, which we can link in the show notes, called "Why Machines Don't Get Cancer." And he goes through what I think is a better way of looking at what cancer really is. So essentially, to sum up what his big long take, and again, watch the Why Machines Don't Get Cancer. He goes into a lot more detail, but here's my idiotic short version of it, which is you think about, like, if all your cells have an intelligence, like we're made up of these collective intelligences across varying scales, okay? And so, one sec, I'm just going to stop this screen share. Okay, so if we are made up of these collective intelligence across various scales, across many different scales, then it's what cancer really is it's like the cells aren't participating. They're not listening to the orders of, like, sorry, let me restart that. Your body is a collective whole, right? That is made up of all these different collective intelligences. And so every cell in there is sort of abiding by the overall, or the hierarchy, or the structure that is you, right? Like your heart cells agree to be heart cells, right? Your brain cells agree to be brain cells. Your skin cells agree to be skin cells, etc. Like they're all sort of working together to maintain this structure and to sort of increase their degrees of freedom, so to speak, or sacrifice their degrees of freedom individually, but collectively allow us to have much more degrees of freedom, right? So they're like, I'll be a blood vessel cell because I'm playing my role in the greater good, so to speak. That kind of makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so cancer cells are cells that are like, fuck you. We don't want to do that. We're going to do our own thing. Right? So they're divergent. So you as your organism, you as Polska, you're essentially going in one way. But if a bunch of cells in your body are like, fuck that. We don't want to listen to, like, we don't agree with this direction. We want to go somewhere different. We want to do something different. Essentially, that's what cancer is. And so this ties into something that I've thought about a lot throughout my life, which is like, if you aren't necessarily being true to yourself or true to your cells, you aren't aligned with your cells in your body, you aren't like living your best life in that regard. Cancer's like, your cells trying to tell you like, you're going the wrong direction, kind of thing. If that it makes a lot of sense to me, but I don't know if that would make sense to you.
It's making sense. You've mentioned this to me before, actually. Something along the lines of this. Yeah. So I'm understanding. So I understand that Michael Levin's hypothesis is that if we're able to stimulate bioelectrically the communication between cells, we can sort of switch things on and off, right? That's essentially what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially think about it like there's a disturbance in the bioelectric field that is allowing the cancer cells to reproduce. Now, an interesting thing about cancer is, the reason why all the cells kind of like stick together and do their thing is because as a total, they get more degrees of freedom. Individually, they have to give up some of their own degrees of freedom, but as a whole, they gain degrees of freedom. So like us as humans can do way more than just like this individual little cell can do. But we're also dependent on the system for our energy supply, right? So blood delivers the nutrients to all the different cells, provides the energy, et cetera, et cetera. And so, when cancer cells start to form, they don't use the traditional mechanism for energy. They use fermentation. So cancer cells develop their own way of producing energy for themselves, which allows them to have unbounded growth. And that's essentially what a cancer cell is something that is unbounded in its growth. It just keeps replicating. It keeps producing more and more and more. It doesn't stop. It doesn't listen to the system control like, you've reached your limit, stop, you've served your pulp. They go, fuck you, we're just going to keep growing. We're just going to keep doing what we want to do.
So essentially the communication would be altered to let them know that no, cancer cells, you're not going to continue doing whatever the fuck you want. You have no choice but to listen, or we'll eliminate you.
Or change it in a way so that like they don't even have that possibility.
Cool. Dope.
Crazy, eh?
Yeah, well, cancer is one of the leading causes of death, right? I think it's like right after cardiac arrest or
cardiovascular disease as a whole.
Yeah, that's right. And then after, I believe cancer is like number 2. It's up there anyways. So
cancers are on the rise, which is interesting. But it also may tie into the fact that people tend, like, you know, we do tend to have a little bit longer lifespan now. But yeah, his lens of looking at cancer was very illuminating to me. Obviously, I just did a very rushed example of it, but I do highly recommend everyone go and listen to that Why Machines Don't Get Cancer. But it's, yeah, fascinating and a really, really eye-opening or mind-expanding lens to look at it through. So any other questions, go for it. I'm just trying to find these images, which for some reason are proving way harder to find.
What did I hear about Michael Levin before? Did you share something about him with me? Like, I feel like 6 months ago or prior to that, because when I saw the clip, I recognized him. Was he on Lex?
He has been on Lex. I think he was on Lex a while back. I've been onto this Michael Levin stuff for a couple of years now, but he's really distilled what he's saying now, and like it's just got so good. But yeah, I've been on this for a while. I've shared a couple of things historically, but like I said to you, that one talk I just recently shared with you is like his most succinct, clearly articulated, beautifully presented, like easy to digest version of what he's saying.
Maybe we can get him on the pod, guy.
He does a heap of pods, so like I think there's a pretty good chance that we could actually.
Yeah, that'd be big for us.
Almost.
Idiot Square getting
that would be
Levin.
That would be huge. I don't know if he would take the reputational hit that he might get.
Yeah.
No, it'd be fascinating.
Yeah.
Look, if you like, this is the thing. If you got some really good questions you want to ask, we can just reach out and say like, hey, like this is what we're interested in. Hook us up.
How is this being received? Have you heard about anything as to how the field of science is receiving these studies, receiving Michael Levin? Are they calling him pseudoscience? Are they, trashing his work, or is he being accepted with open arms?
So in the circles of people and the sort of, in the circles of people that I tend to like converse with or engage with and follow and consume content from, it's being incredibly well received. In terms of the mainstream stuff, I have no idea, mainly because I don't spend a lot of time there, mainly because, I haven't found that they're going down the right paths or what they do is useful or effective broadly or largely. So I can't say there, but I do know that he pumps out a shit ton of papers and they're really good to read, very eye-opening. And his stuff isn't just biology based. This goes across like so many different fields. Like I said, physics, computation, information theory, active inference, psychiatry, all of these different fields. And so he does like weekly or monthly podcasts or talk sessions with like people from all different fields, from across the board. And so he's very interdisciplinary. And these are the sorts of people that I typically like to engage and listen to, consume content from, as opposed to like the very narrow, like, oh, I'm a biologist, this is all I do is this one narrow path down something in biology. So yeah, he's and again, he's done heaps of talks with other people who I've discovered, but through different mechanisms. So like he's done a bunch of talks with Carl Friston, who is the free energy principle guy. And I came to discover or find out about free energy principle from trying to understand physics and consciousness. And then you're like, oh, they've had a talk. And then the concepts they discuss are very interesting. Josh Gabak, Stephen Wolfram. That talk I sent you was from the SEMP conference, who's run by a guy, Carlos, or who's the founder of it, who's part of the Wolfram Physics Project. And the whole SEMP thing is like interdisciplinary school. So it's about getting all these different people from all these different fields, getting them together and finding like the overlaps, like Venn diagram of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris's favorite word, Venn diagram. But it's just cool because you're colliding all these different ideas and seeing where things overlap, or if one field's way of looking at something is useful for another field, or if it illuminates something that was otherwise not seen because we were looking at it through a different way. What he's showing here is the K channels, blocked head degeneration, adaptation, and regeneration. So he's altered the ion channel, transporter, and gap junction expression, and the barium adapted head. So this is what you were talking about, the barium exploding, and then they'll be able to regenerate. So we've got to go through here. Okay, so I don't know if you remember, like this is very Wolfram physics. Nodes, graphs.
Even looks like a wolf.
Hyper edges.
Look.
Hey?
You see how it looks like a wolf as well?
Yeah, it does. The dog, Pavlov's dog. Okay, so hold on. We got to get a bit further along here. How we detect and model bioelectric signals. So what he's showing here of endogenous voltage gradients, direct measurement and correlation with morphogenetic events. So this is like a map of that bioelectric field. And then based on the way that this looks, or, like the different colors or regions that are lit up or not lit up, is sort of like, will influence what is physically expressed. And then he's showing here how you can have, so he's adjusting the ion channels, and then how that adjustment causes different morphological forms, so to speak. So human oncogene induced tumor. So he's got the tumor in there, and they're showing bioelectrically that the tumor is there. I think they go on. Anyway, okay, so I don't have the greatest visuals, but yes, this bioelectric field, being able to see the changes in this bioelectric field and then being able to map that to the different physiological outcomes is key. And that's what they've already started to do in a number of different things.
I'm mad hope you're right, guy. I'm mad hope that we see this in our lifetime. Like, that would be so wild. I feel like that's like peak human advancement. Like, I get that we could go further in that, but like, wow, that's a mountaintop. You know what I mean? Limb regeneration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anti-aging.
So,
cancer shit. Like, that's damn.
Why are you sort of skeptical about it? You know what I mean? Like I understand it's healthy to have a little bit of skepticism. Like literally every other time that this has been said throughout human history, you would be right in saying it's not going to happen.
So where's my skepticism?
Yeah. So you say, I hope you're right. I hope it, within 20 years we see this, whatever. Like, why do you think we might not? Like, you've seen what he's done already. You've seen how there is proof that this stuff works in like these organisms down here.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't that scale up?
Right.
So to speak.
Yeah. Just because I get. There's been a huge jump from what's it? It's not pylori. Pylori is a sickness. H. pylori, it's in the gut, right?
Yes.
What is it that he used? The worms?
Planaria.
He's made the jump from planaria to a frog leg. They've successfully regenerated a frog leg, which is incredible. But I think the jump from frog leg to human leg is leaps and bounds. And even if we can get there, I have no confidence in our leaders to sort of do the right thing with it. I feel like people would try and control it. It would be political. It would be just bullshit headaches. We would have many companies trying to like suppress the technology. ones that are going to be affected economically by this technology, and it getting to market and actually being available for humans. There's just so many barriers because of these, just because of the corporations and governments. And I feel like it's just going to be suppressed. If it wasn't suppressed, if it was all hands on deck, yeah, bro, we could have this shit, in the next couple of decades, probably. You know what I mean? But with all of these greedy, sick people that we have running shit, I'm afraid they're going to find a way to control it. I'm afraid that they're going to find a way to suppress it, as well, which obviously they absolutely shouldn't. But we've seen the suppression of certain technologies in terms of energy, which has been, scientifically proven could have a substantial positive effect on the environment, but corporations and governments aren't deciding to, implement the necessary steps, because corporations are suppressing it, ones that are benefiting from our current circumstances. So if they're doing it with that, they're going to do it with I don't know who exactly, but I imagine pharmaceutical industry would likely be one of the players trying to suppress this technology. And they're one of the most powerful entities or, conglomerates that we currently have. Like I heard recently that 80, I think it was 75 or 80% of the funding that like cable receives is from pharmaceutical companies, which is absurd.
Television, you mean?
Yeah, in the States.
Yeah.
Like how fucking insane is that? 80%? I think it was like that, like 75 or 80%. That's retarded.
No, I completely agree with you. So I do agree, and that like I have those concerns as well because of what you mentioned. But the other thing that I think is beautiful about this is Levin is doing it in like a very open source way. So like the ideas are already out there. A bunch of his work and the studies, all that's already been published. So like, because it's already been shown to be possible in other organisms, right? Specifically the frogs, then this opens the door for other people to explore and try this. And like, I think that's one of the coolest things about the internet is like, it's made it way harder to suppress certain things at times. Like it's also made it way easier to suppress certain things. It's kind of like this double-edged sword, but like this is already out there. And I don't think it's going to be 20 years. I think it could be sooner than that. Like honestly, with the use of like AI as a universal function approximator is an incredibly useful tool. And it just can accelerate progress with things like this rapidly. Like I'd be surprised if someone or some people in the world haven't already started trying to do this on themselves.
Yeah, like a whole lab guy.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, you're
right.
Because
the drugs already exist, right? Like he has a whole database of ion channel drugs, and it's just being able to understand like what is your current bioelectric state or field, what do you want it to be, or what do you need it to be to get the outcome that you want. And like, that's a really big search space problem. Like that's a huge search space kind of thing. But again, with AI, machine learning, everything else, like it becomes tractable.
And since Michael Levin has made it open source in a way, there's many laboratories, private laboratories that could bring this to market eventually as well.
Yeah. Well, so he has a company. He acknowledges that he has a company that's devoted to this already. Yeah. So he has, he has to announce some of his, what are they called in academia? Why am I blanking?
Yeah, no, I conflict of interest.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, conflict of interest. So he's got a company that's already into this sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very bullish on this. I think this is, I think it's interesting. I just can't wait to see. Like, but it just renders so many things like obsolete as well. Like bye shitty face cream that you put on your face to, stay looking young or rejuvenating or whatever. you're either going to take an ion channel drug or modulator, or put something on your skin that can affect the ion channels to get your bioelectric field to make your skin beautiful and youthful and plump and delicious, or whatever you want it to be.
What a utopia. What a utopia, bro.
Yeah.
There's so much shit happening right now. Like, we could soon have free energy, invincibility. Not invincibility, but you know what I mean.
Almost invincibility.
Fuck, that would be so dope, man.
So one thing, just quickly, I don't know, and you help me make this distinction. So with the planaria, right? They're already immortal in a sense. He didn't make them immortal. He discovered, he found out about these things and was like, wait, what? These things live for hundreds or thousands of years. Like, this is crazy. And then he figured out that he's like, oh, he didn't figure out, sorry. He became aware that other people had tested this, that they have this ability to regenerate. And he's like, oh, I thought this was impossible for biological organisms because of entropy. Entropy is a whole nother discussion we can go into. Stephen Wolfram and the Wolfram Physics Project have a really cool framing of entropy and how it doesn't actually exist in the way that we think it does, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's another pod. But he's like, wait, how? What? Why? And then he figured out that okay, so if they can do it, then maybe it's possible for other things. And then that sort of led to all of this work. So yeah, and the planaria they haven't evolved for I need to reword that. They are immortal in a sense. And he also discusses how messy their genome is and how Frankenstein-y they really are. But it was that sort of stuff that sort of opened his eyes to think that this other stuff was possible, which has now led to him finding the things that he's found and the mechanisms that he's discovered and the framework that he's put in place. So he didn't make them regenerate. They already had that ability. So, and then now he's taken what he's learned from that and applied it to the frog stuff and the rest of it, and then being able to get them to regenerate.
Didn't you say before that he cut up a planaria into hundreds of pieces and they all regenerated?
Yeah, so I think it might be different now, but it was about 250 pieces is the record, or 270 pieces. You can chop a planaria up into 270 different pieces and it'll regenerate itself.
Sounds kind of sadistic.
Well, yeah, because some dude was testing to see how many pieces he could chop it into before it would stop doing it. And it's about 270 or 250. What? Poor planaria.
Yo, that planaria guy.
But that's a way of cloning a planaria is chop a piece of it off and it will regrow.
Imagine it'd be very difficult to grow a human body from let's say a finger or an arm, right?
Well, I think it would just take time and resources.
How would that work though? Because you don't have your arm doesn't have a way to pump blood through it, and there's no sort of electrical stimulation maintaining muscle mass. Would you have your arm hooked up to a machine? Let's say your body got blown up and then someone found a piece of your hand and wanted to regenerate your entire body by just using the hand.
So the way I imagine that would happen is that then it would have to be suspended in some sort of bioelectric field in a fluid that has some bioelectric field that also has the nutrients and everything else to allow those processes to happen chemically without the heart, without everything else, and then starts to grow those things from that.
Yeah, and because memories aren't the hypothesis that memories are sort of implanted into everywhere, all your cells, it's likely that you would have many of your childhood memories still intact.
Yes. To what resolution? I don't know, but yeah, potentially. So this is, we don't know that for sure just yet if that is the case in humans.
Yeah.
But it's sort of leaning towards that, which would be fascinating, right?
Yeah, dude, that'd be crazy.
Absolutely. So one important thing to note, just as we're talking about this, so with the frogs, what he did was like when they chopped the leg off and then regrew it, was they soaked them in a solution of these ion channel drugs, specific ones. And then they were able to soak them for 24 hours. And then the frog had regenerative abilities for the next year, I'm pretty sure. But they would administer different, like if to monitor that bioelectric field, they would have to administer different ion channel drugs or modulate the ion channels in a certain way to get the limb to regrow in the way that they wanted it to regrow. So I assume a similar thing would happen for us as humans. Is either we would soak in these things or we would bathe in them, plus taking some or having them directly administered to the site to facilitate that regeneration. And then, how quick can we make it happen would be, obviously it's going to start probably pretty slow. And then over time, we'd find ways to, speed that process up. But it's not going to just be like, I want a new arm and you have a new arm. It will take some amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But so this just changes heaps of things, right? Like, so this is like, you and I have discussed heaps about stem cells, right? Yeah. Fantastic for certain things, but this is like another level on that.
Fuck yeah.
This can render a lot of those things like, obsolete, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Stem cells would be a thing completely obsolete with this technology. 100%.
Like certain drugs, medications, all sorts of different things would become obsolete in a sense.
Yeah, it would completely change the medical landscape completely, dude.
Absolutely. So back to your point before about earlier in the conversation about that movie with Justin Timberlake about time. Yeah. And, once you get past a certain age, then, your time starts running out. And the only way you can get more time is by having money or whatever it was. That's a legit concern for me with these kinds of technologies, because money does talk, so to speak. And, I think this will be available to people that have money first, as opposed to the people that don't. And so then it does create this strange imbalance, maybe power dynamic. I don't know. But yes, that's one hypothetical concern for me. Also why I want to be on the cutting edge of this, because I don't want to be someone that, can't do this or isn't, aware of it or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. The access, guys, all about access.
All right. So we're going to wrap up the episode. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, that's all I got.
If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoy information like this or topics like this, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like the video if this was helpful and informative, and share the video if you think or somebody that may be interested in this or benefit from the work and the works that we discussed here. Anti-aging, cell rejuvenation, limb regrowth, all of the cool stuff of science fiction could actually be science fact. And it could be possible in our lifetime. So thank you very much for listening. Have a lovely day, night, wherever you are. Peace. Goodbye. Love you, guy.
I love you, bro. Peace.
Peace.